So there you have it, there's the pole up. So just to quickly explain what
I've got my little friend here that's not letting me get on with my jobs. Aren't you, Dorothy? Ready?
Jim's up the garden. Oh, Jim's up the garden.
So that's and other things are going to be in this edition of Jim's Allotment Garden. At this time of year, I always think, why didn't I plant more parsnips? I always grow two rows, and I always kind of get halfway through them because I like parsnips so much. I always kind of wish that I'd grown a few more. But the one thing you need to sort of need to remember about parsnips is they don't sort of keep too well after. You want to eat them after you've had a frost, so that they're nice and sweet. But you also need to remember that come the spring, they will very soon run to seed, and so you've only really got a sort of 2 or 3 month window where you can actually eat the parsnips. So, and obviously you don't want to get fed up of them and spoil a good thing. So, but what I have found, which is why I'm just quickly doing a video. So I'm procrastinating a little bit at the moment whilst I dig these out. But the one thing that I have found is the parsnips up at that end were sort of quite big, and as I've worked up this end, and if you remember, I explained that this area here, the soil wasn't very good, and I remember that this end got a lot of manure in it last year, and that end didn't, and I think it's really made a big difference. Because you can tell in the size of the parsnips as you move up the row. That end there got mucked, that end didn't. I'm finding that there is quite a marked difference in the size. Having said that, I'm going to probably pull out a really big one, but I think that those 4 there will probably do me. In fact, there's one there just popping out of. I'll take that one as well, because it's quite a small one. That's quite a nice shaped one. I've had quite a few sort of this shape. I don't know why, but the top's quite big, and then I've had these like multiple roots coming out the bottom. Now these bits here are nice for roasting, I've found, but this if you're making a stew like I am, really you want a nice big one so you can peel it. There are a few small ones like this which I don't really bother about, because by the time you peeled them, cleaned them up and stuff, there's only a mouthful if that there, to be honest with you. But so that'll do me for today, and I'll let you know how they got on as I get down the other end of the row. But as you can see, I've already had probably more than 50% of them now, so I'm quickly running out. But there's one thing you always say grown organically, and I noticed this with parsnips more than anything. You can't beat your own parsnips, because if you buy the ones from the shops, they really are quite tasteless in comparison. Whereas if you grow your own, you can really, really taste the difference, and the texture's much better as well. I think the ones that you get in the shop are quite sort of tough and dry. I don't know if it's the varieties that they grow or sort of what. But in the next couple of weeks, just to give you a quick heads up, what I'm going to be doing is showing you how to make a parsnip propagator. And as you know, parsnips are a plant that you can't really transplant, because with a parsnip there's one very thin tapping root, and when the small seedlings, it literally is like a hair, and if you break that, then the parsnip just doesn't grow properly, or at all. But I've devised a method of growing parsnips in the greenhouse, so that what I'll do is I'll plant 2, possibly 3 rows this year of parsnips, and what you always end up with is you always end up with spaces in the row, for some reason, spaces in the row where one hasn't grown, or when you first weed them out you find that you've got a sort of 9 or 10 inch gap where you haven't got a parsnip. But what would be nice to do is to transplant a parsnip into that space to to completely utilise the row. So over the last few years I've tried various things to enable me to plant parsnips so I can transplant them into the ground, and I believe that I've found the best way of doing that. So what I'll do in the next couple of weeks, as soon as I've finished the weather vane, is I'll explain to you how to do that and how to build something which will enable you to plant the parsnip seeds and transplant them into the ground where you've got a space. Now you can do this completely, so you grow them all in the greenhouse and then plant them out in the ground. What I'm going to do is do this purely for just filling the row up where I've got a space. So I will still sow them into the ground, but I will also sow some in the greenhouse so I can sort of bob them in where there's any spaces. So that'll be coming up in the next few weeks. Okay, so onto the pole. This is a piece of, I think it's gas pipe, to be honest with you. It's a steel pipe of probably about 1 inch across, and there's a length here which is, as you can see, probably about 6-8 foot long. And what I'm going to be doing is driving a steel post into the ground, which will be a solid bar. I'll show you that in a moment. Then this is going to go over that, so that pole will go inside this one, and then at the top of this I'll be welding some conduit pipe, and then on top of that will be the bit that used to be in the steering part of the bike, which is obviously the same size as the weather vane. Okay, so the first thing to do is to cut this off around here. Now there's I don't know if you can see, but there's like a right angle elbow joint on it here. Obviously I don't want that on there, I only want the straight bit. But what I'm going to do is cut it off to leave some of that on there, because that'll only serve to strengthen it. So all I'm going to do is just very quickly get it wedged in so it doesn't move. I'll put it on top of there, that's it. Then I'll just cut through that with the angle grinder. There you go, and it's as quick as that. And I've noticed I've got a bit of wire inside there, so that's obviously, it must have been wire conduit before I got my hands on it. But so there's the end of the pipe. So that'll be the bit that's at the bottom. So I'll just quickly tidy up any rough edges on there, so that'll be ready. On the other end, what I'm going to do is, just so I've got a nice neat edge, I'll cut off about 1 inch or so just to tidy it up, and then I'll luckily the conduit will sit actually inside here, so I'll be able to just weld straight onto there. Okay, so this is where the weather vane pole is going to go. Also, it's the opposite end to the one, and I'll show you how I did that one, because I'm going to do this one exactly the same way. So basically, the problem that I've got is underneath. If I dig down around about 18 inches or so, I've got sandstone. So the top half of the allotment is actually sitting on sandstone, which is good because it's really good for drainage and everything. But when you're trying to put a post in, it's a bit of a pain in the bum. When I put these posts in, I drove them in as far as I could, but the last but one over there, I actually couldn't get it in any further, so I used an SDS drill to drill a hole down, a core cutter about 1.5 inches down, to cut a hole through the sandstone as far as I could possibly go. Then I drove the post in with a sledgehammer as far as it would go, and then I put a bit of concrete around the bottom of it. I know you're not supposed to use concrete in an allotment, but to be honest with you, you could get it out quite easily if you sort of dug around it and stuff, so you know, it's not as though it's a permanent fixture. So what I've done here is, this is a pole which is about 6 foot, and what I've done is cut a spike on the end of it so it would drive into the sandstone, and I've driven it in with a sledgehammer, as far as I could possibly get it, and then I've just obviously when you're banging it in, you've got to sort of splay all the top over. So what I've done is I've just cut that off with the angle grinder, so the pipe will slot over quite easily. So here's the pipe. This is the one you've just seen me cutting, and just to show you what I'm thinking of, this is a piece of conduit pipe, which is just standard conduit. What I'm going to be doing is, I had a note from I think it was Mark Dawson. I'll check, if not I'll write the person's name down as a comment, and he said he actually made a weather vane a few years back, and he said he made such a good job of it. Some monkey came up to his allotment and pinched it, so what I want to do is make sure that this one's out of arm's reach as such. So what I'm going to be doing is adding a few more feet onto the top of it. So what I'll do is I'll push this pipe in probably about I don't know, about a foot or so, and then I'll weld round the top here to you know, to make sure that that's all nice and fixed in, nice and solid, and then that'll hopefully put the weather vane out of arm's reach so nobody can get hold of it. And I'll be bolting this onto the raspberry frame here anyway, so all being well, even if they stand on top of it, it's going to be almost impossible for them to get it off. Obviously you can't always completely stop people from doing things, but if you make it difficult for them, hopefully there'll be enough of a deterrent for them not to bother. So that's the steel solid bar driven into the ground, and I've obviously dug down there about 18 inches or so, and that's driven in probably about another 2 feet after that. So as you can imagine, this is like a, you know, as you can see, it's absolutely solid in the stone there, so there's absolutely no need for concrete or anything like that. And then this is going to, this pole here, if I can just line it up, that's going to sit actually inside this one, which is obviously going to support it. So that pole's going to end up kind of like that. Now the top of that now is probably about 7 foot off ground level. Now what I'm going to be doing is bolting this here with a clamp onto the cage for the raspberry, so obviously that's going to be nice and solid. And if I just show you the one that I made last year, you'll be able to understand what I'm going to do. So all I've done is I've just got a bit of Dexian racking. This is just like a bit of box section steel, and I've cut out the shape of the pipe, and then with two I think they're M8 bolts, I've gone through here, bolted it onto the other side here with some nylock nuts, and I've got the same at the bottom as well. So that is most certainly sort of nice and solid. You know, that's not sort of going anywhere. This pipe's actually driven right into the ground. This is about a 10-foot length of pipe, and obviously the weather vane sits on the top. So as you can see, it's not quite in arm's reach from ground level. Obviously somebody could potentially step onto the raspberry or something here and pull it off, but obviously, you know, you can't do too much. Now the thoughts for putting it here is if it ever fell over, it's going to either fall that way or this way. That's why I've put it on this side of the raspberry things, the raspberry cage, sort of, what do you call it, structure that they all grow up. But more importantly, if I sort of come here, that's where the greenhouse is. Now if the thing does fall down, I don't want it to hit the greenhouse because it's going to take all the glass out. So what I've done is I've put it here so that if it does fall down, it's either going to fall that way onto the allotment, so it won't do any damage as such that way, or it's going to fall towards the camera or away from the camera, but obviously not towards the greenhouse. So so the next stage is obviously that's going to be sort of in there. I'm going to use a spirit level to make sure it's level, and all I'm going to do is basically just put the spirit level on there, make sure it's all level, both that way and also obviously this way, like that. And then I'm going to bolt it onto the frame here, and that should be sort of nice and secure then for the weather vane to go up on here. And then obviously protruding out of the top is going to be this, or at least the length of this. So I think probably that much is probably going to be about right. So I'm going to need about another 18 inches or so above there. So if I push that down into the pipe so there's that much protruding. Then I'll weld that round that boss at the top, which used to be the angle alba joint there, as you remember. I've just cut that off. And then onto the top of there will be the bit of pipe which came off the handlebars of the bike, which I know is a perfect fit to go into the bottom of the weather vane. I'm not going to paint anything quite yet. What I'm going to do is get it all in, make sure it's all right, and it's the right kind of height, and it's not going to cause any problem. Bolt it all in, and then what I'll do is, after I've done all of that, is paint it all up after that. To let you into a bit of a plan that I've been thinking recently, I've still got a load of raspberries in the in my freezer, and in all honesty I think I've got too many raspberries here. I think probably one row is going to be more than sufficient for what we need. So this row of raspberries here I am actually going to dig out this year. And what I'm going to be doing, rather than having raspberries here, what I'm going to do is grow some, I'm going to grow an apple tree and I'm going to grow a pear tree in there. And the way I'm going to grow it is, I can't remember the name, I'll put it on the bottom of the screen, but it's basically where you train the tree up and then you train the cross sections of the branches over. And what I'm going to be doing is putting some wires in. So there's going to be a wire kind of halfway between this bar here and this bar here, and then I'm going to be putting another one in at the bottom so I can train the branches across. So what I should get when I've trained it is, on each of the apple tree and the pear tree, is to have 4 branches going to the right and 4 branches going to the left on both trees, and in between the trees I'm going to put the apple tree kind of somewhere here and the pear tree somewhere over here. I may also put a cherry tree in at the middle, and train a cherry tree in exactly the same way. Then on each of the edges, so at that end up there and at this end up here, I'm going to be planting the Josterbury bushes, which are the ones that are just here, which are the ones that I've grown from cuttings last year. So these ones here, these are Josterbury bushes here, which is kind of a hybrid between black currants and gooseberries. So they're quite nice for doing fulls and jams and things like that. So I think that'll be quite useful. And then I'm going to be adding some blueberry bushes in there as well. So what I'm going to end up with by hopefully the end of this year is, within this bit here, I'm going to take all the raspberries out. I'm going to end up with an apple tree, a cherry tree, a plum tree, and then in between the trees I'm going to be putting the Josterbury bushes probably to each end, and then in the middle between the 2 trees I'm going to be putting 2 blueberry bushes. I'm going to be looking on the internet to buy these. Now I know Asda and Tesco's and places like that at the moment are actually selling apple trees, cherry trees and pear trees. I may get them from there. I think they're working out about £5 each. But the blueberry bushes, I'm going to be using the same company probably. I've not confirmed this yet, but the company that I bought the 2 grapevines off last year, which is Poma, P-O-M-I-A or something like that, Poma fruits. I'm going to be getting the 2 blueberry bushes from there over the internet, but the trees that I can buy sort of locally from sort of supermarkets, etc., I'm more likely than not to get them from there. But in a few weeks' time, when I start to do this, I'll explain to you where I've got them from and how I'm planting them, etc., because I'll be preparing the ground for that and showing it, because obviously trees and these bushes and stuff are going to be in the ground for sort of, I don't know, well, at least 10 years if not more. So I'll be explaining how to prepare the ground when you're doing this, and sort of getting everything ready. And I will also be putting a rooting enzyme in the soil as well, which is something, if you look at the grapevine, there's the video about the grapevines I put out last year, kind of August, September time, which was called All About Grapevines. If you look on there, I'm going to be using the same stuff as that, which you can get from most garden centres, but this encourages the roots to grow into the ground. So that's what's going to be happening here ultimately. So obviously I'm thinking of that already. But for now, let's get back to the weather vane and get this pole sorted. Okay, so that's the bit of the handlebar there that we need. Obviously that's the bit that originally went inside the bottom of the. So it's probably quicker to explain to show you. Obviously goes inside there, so that's the right piece of size pipe. So what I'm just going to quickly do now is cut that off with an angle grinder. Then I'm going to be welding that onto the end of this piece of pipe, which is just a piece of conduit, and then that conduit is then going to sit inside the large pole that I've just shown you up the garden. So I'll just do that now. Okay, so there's a bit of pipe which is going to be connected to the main post. There's the bit that's going to go inside the weather vane. So just to quickly reiterate or show you a quick trick, if you get a piece of angle iron, obviously straight, if you put the two pieces of pipe in that you're going to weld together, obviously they need to be roughly the same size, if not the same size, and obviously there's not a lot in this, as you can see, they're almost the same size. If you weld them together like that, then you know full well they're going to be in a perfectly straight line. And you can use this technique for welding any shape steel together, but if you put it in the V, sort of turn the angle line upside down, obviously making sure it's perfectly straight, put it in the vise, and then what it actually does is gives you a cradle to weld the two pieces of pipe together. The other trick is when you're welding pipe together, separate them slightly, about a millimetre, or in Old English that's about 39-40 thou. Just pull them apart like that, and then what you do is you fill the gap with weld. If you do it like that, what you can get is the weld sitting on the surface, and it's not anywhere near as strong. So just pull them apart very slightly like that, and then weld all the way around one edge. So from there around to there. As soon as you've done that, they're obviously going to be in a straight line. Then you can just turn it around and weld the other side to complete it, and then I'll just quickly linish it off, just to sort of tidy it up with the angle grinder. Okay, so there's the pipe welded together. If you don't need to linish off the weld, then don't bother. The reason I've done this is this bit here is going to sit inside the weather vane, and what I was concerned about is if it goes past this point, it might be a little bit hard to get it back off, and obviously if anything happens to the weather vane and I need to fix it or repaint it or whatever, I want to be able to get it down. So I've linished all that off so that I know when it goes on I'm going to be able to get it back off again. Okay, so now I've got that on the top there. This is exactly the same trick now. What I've done is a couple of bits of scrap steel. These are just the bits I cut out from the letters, and you'll see that that's perfectly aligned with the angle line. So I'll just clamp that in with a pair of mole grips, and here to get that in the centre, it's actually two old cutting discs. So that is now, if I hold that in there, that's perfectly in the centre of that. So if I now weld round there, the bit that I can see, that's going to make sure that this pipe is in exactly the centre of this pipe. So I'll do that now. Okay, so that's the pipe welded together. So I'm not going to bother, it's still a little bit hot, I'm not going to bother cleaning this up as such. I'll just very quickly go over it with the angle grinder just to make sure there's no sharp edges. But the one tip I will say is when you're welding sort of thick walled pipe like this, get the weld nice and hot so you're actually melting the pipe around it as you're welding it. I typically have the wire speed really slow, so that you get a lot of heat into the weld. I did exactly the same here, not quite as much because this pipe here has got a wall thickness of about 1.5 millimeters, so that one was not quite as powerful. But with this I turned the power up and I slowed the wire speed down to make sure that I got really good penetration on the weld, so that it's nice and strong. So as you can see, I can lift, and I can lift the whole pipe. Obviously that's going all the way out to there. I can lift the pipe quite easily with that, so I know that the weld's nice and strong. So I'll just very quickly linish that off with the angle grinder, just taking the sharp edges off, and then it's going to be ready to erect. So the only other part that I need to do now is the two brackets, which I'm going to show you next. but just whilst this is cooling, I think it's time for a cup of tea. Okay, onto the brackets now, which we're going to hold it onto the raspberry fence, whatever you call it. So basically all this is made from is a bit of this stuff, which is basically used in most sort of factories. You know, you don't have to use this, you could use a bit of box section or whatever, but because I've got a bit of this lying about, I'm going to be using this. And all I'm going to be doing is cutting between the two holes. Obviously the two bolts are going to be going through here and here, and then the pipe is going to sit here. So what I'm going to be doing in a moment is cutting a sort of half circle out here, so that'll clamp onto the pipe, and that'll be the second one. And just to put all of your minds at rest, I know you're worried, but this does conform to British Standard 6946, which was founded in 1988.
Look, I've got my little friend here that's not letting me get on with my jobs. Aren't you, Dorothy? Ready?
So what I've done with the bracket, what you need to do is, as you can imagine, you've got to cut out the same shape as the pipe. Now this is just a bit of pipe that I cut off the end, and what you want to do, can you see that that's overhanging? Because what you don't want to do is, when this is all bolted up, you need to have a bit of space between this and the other bit, so that you're actually clamping the pipe as opposed to the pipe rattling around in here. So just put your bit of pipe over the bracket you're going to make like that, and can you see it's overhanging slightly? You only need about, I don't know, 5mm, 4mm, something like that. You don't need it too much, but do it like that. She's pestering me, look. Oh no, Daddy's coming, hang on, Dorothy. Like that, and then what you can do is then cut out this with the angle grinder, and all you need to do is just move it over so it's here, and then you can cut out quite easily with the angle grinder. Just grind that out. Do exactly the same thing on the other side, and then you could then got the clamp to go over the pipe and the frame, so you can clamp it all in. So there you go. So that's the first one done. So just a quick note: what I've used is a really thick grinding wheel. That's probably about 8 or 9mm in diameter. Just to basically just grind that shape out, and basically what you need to do is cut it out, and then just make sure that the pipe sits in there nice and snug. And if you can see the pipe protrudes, so as I tighten that up, it's going to clamp the pipe against the other bit of metal up the garden. And obviously just a quick note, which I always say, make sure you've gone round all the edges with the angle grinder, just to make sure you've got no rough edges that anybody's going to cut their hands on, because the likelihood is it's going to be your hands that get cut when you're picking the raspberries or whatever. So that's the first one done. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with this one now, to cut out the shape from this. And obviously as soon as you've made the first one, use that as a template just to draw around, and then you'll make sure you get the top and the bottom on the same. And then what we need to do then is get some bolts, and obviously I'm going to be using M8 bolts, something like that, which is going to pass through the back there and then bolt on the inside. So I'll be drilling some 8mm holes through the framework at the top. That's going to go through there, pipe's going to go through here, and then I'm just going to drop a nut on there, and then as I tighten the nut up, it obviously it's going to clamp it to the rest. Okay, so that's the two brackets made, and just to make sure that they sit over the pipe and it's nice and tight, as you can see they're going to sit like that, and as you can see from underneath it's not quite all the way through, so it actually clamps the pipe. So I've checked that both of those sit on alright, so them pair are ready to go. I've managed to sort out a bit of a motley crew of washers to go through, so just as long as it holds the strength. So that'll be on, if you imagine, that'll be on one side, which will be here, then on the other side I've got a nylock nut with another standard M8 washer to go on there, and obviously M8 nuts and bolts are 13mm, so I've got the spanners for that. And all I need now is the 8mm drill, and we can go and sort out where these need to be. Okay, so there's the full pipe in situ, and that's sitting on top of the steel pole that goes in the ground. And I've drilled the holes out, as you can see there and there. And the way I've done that is basically get your bracket, put that over, and then you can see then where the holes need to be. And basically what I've done then is I've just got to, whilst I'm doing that, obviously I can't do this with a camera, just get a spirit level. You don't need to worry about this way, you're worried about that way at the moment, obviously, because you want to know where the holes are. Get it, get the spirit level just right, and then you'll know where to to drill the holes, and then obviously the brackets now are going to go the opposite way around. So as you can see there, the bolts will now go through there. So there you have it, there's the pole up. So just to quickly explain what I've just done, what you need to do, obviously the bolts are now through on the brackets top and bottom. What you need to do is put the bolts in loosely so you can still move the pole backwards and forwards. Obviously make sure everything's level, your bubble's in the middle. As soon as you've done that, bolt the top one up, tighten the top one up so you know it's in the right place, and then bolt in the bottom one, which is obviously going to stop it from sort of swaying backwards and forwards. So all I need to do now is I'm going to paint the pole under the ground as well, so I'm going to leave the hole you know, sort of not backfilled yet. And what I'll do in the next couple of weeks when we've got a dry period is just come up and paint the pole with primer and gloss. And as you can see, that's probably about 10 foot up, the tip of that, and if you can see the black bit, that's the bit that's going to sit in the bottom part of the weather vane. So the actual top of the weather vane is going to be something like a foot above that. So all being well, you know, nobody should be able to most certainly reach it. So I'm going to have to get up on a ladder to put it up, or some, you know, some step ladders to put it up. But hopefully that'll be high enough to deter anybody from trying to nick it. So that's the post in. Here's the view from kind of this side. It's basically an identical copy of the
Jim's up the garden. Oh, Jim's up the garden.
So I hope this episode of Jim's Allotment Garden has been of some use to you. Please do put your comments down below. Please subscribe, and thank you to everybody that's subscribed so far. I do appreciate your support with this channel, and I'll see you on the next edition of Jim's Allotment Garden.